load. That means overall discussion of electrical power system has been done earlier. Today, we'll be discussing the voltage regulation and efficiency of transmission lines, but we'll be starting right from the basics of the transmission. Further, we'll work towards the equivalent pi and t representations of the transmission system. And after that, we'll be starting with the introduction. Transmission line is a link between the generating station and the distribution station. Okay. The purpose of this transmission line is to transfer power from the standing terminal, that is the generating station, to the load, that is the distribution side. Thus, being a link between the generating station and distribution system, a transmission line is used for transmission of electrical power from generating substation to the various distribution units. It transmits the wave of voltage and current from one end to another. The transmission line is made up of conductor having a uniform cross sectional along the path. Here, the air acts as an insulator or dielectric medium between the conductors. So if we think about the transmission line, it is, we can consider that the transmission line consists of a charged conductors. Then below the transmission line, we have air as a medium, or we can say it as a dielectric medium. And then again, we have another conducting material, which is earth. So in short, we have two conducting materials and a dielectric medium between them. This causes a formation of a capacitor that we have studied earlier in standard 12th. That is, we can say that a transmission line consists of, as well as it consists of twisted wires, twisted cables, thus making it inductive in nature. Thus we can say that the transmission line, whole and soul, has capacitor as well as inductor. Okay. So if this transmission line is inductive and capacitive, we can say that the whole transmission line can be represented in a small circuit. And such a small circuit that consists of all the complete resistance, inductance, and capacitance, we call such a diagram or such a circuit as equivalent circuit. So in this unit, we will be able to form the equivalent circuits. Okay. So now let us move ahead. Classification of overhead transmission lines. Just wait a second. Okay. So the classification of transmission line. A transmission line has three constants, as I have discussed now before, that a transmission line is resistive in nature, as well as it is inductive in nature, as well as it has a capacitance. A capacitance is developed between the transmission line and ground. Thus, we can say that the whole transmission line consists of resistive, inductive, and capacitive small loads. Thus, these resistance, inductance, and capacitance is distributed uniformly along the whole length of the line. Now, the resistance and inductance forms the series impedance. The capacitance existing between conductors of first single phase line or from a conductor to neutral for three phase line forms a shunt path through the length of the line. Thus, capacitance affects complications in transmission line calculations. So, it cannot be neglected. Thus, it becomes important for us to consider each and every parameter, that is the resistive nature, the inductive nature, and the capacitive nature. So further, the transmission line is classified in various forms. Like the first classification is the overhead lines and the underground cables. The overhead transmission lines are further classified as short transmission lines, medium transmission lines, and long transmission lines depending upon the capacitance formed between the by the overhead line transmission line. Then we have another classification of transmission line as the underground cables, underground transmission lines. As you can see on the pictorial figures that the overhead transmission line is basically the transmission conductors laid over the head on the towers, whereas the under on the if you see the underground cables, they are placed in a drain, and this drain will be covered after the cables are placed manually. Now, so sorry. As we have seen that the overhead transmission lines are further classified as short, medium, and long transmission lines. We study it in little depth that depending upon the manner in which the capacitance is taken into the account, the overhead transmission lines are classified as short transmission lines, medium transmission lines, and long transmission lines. The length of the short transmission lines varies from 0 to 80 kilometers. The line comprising connecting 0 to 80 kilometers, we call it as a short line. This line carries a voltage of up to 11 to 33 kV. The parameters that we consider in a short-term transmission line consist of resistive and inductive load only. Whereas if the length of the conductors increases, that is the length of the transmission line increases and the short transmission line is backed up by the medium transmission lines, the length of the medium transmission line varies from 80 kilometer to 160 kilometers. So we can say that a transmission line lying in the range from 80 kilometers to 160 kilometers can be stated under the medium transmission line. To the medium transmission line, we can send a voltage wave and current wave, voltage wave of 66 to 133 kilovolt. Now, since the medium transmission line is larger in length as compared to the short-term transmission line, here a new parameter is introduced in the circuit, which is the capacitance. Thus, we can say that in case of a medium transmission line, we need to calculate the resistive, inductive, and capacitive parameter of the transmission line. But in the earlier case, since due to the less length or of the transmission line, we needed to calculate only the resistance and inductive parameter of the transmission line. Now, as soon as the transmission line length is increased further from 100 kilometers, from 160 kilometers to above, it is stated it comes under that long transmission line. The long transmission line can sustain a voltage up to above 132 kilovolt to 765 kV. Till now in India, to the long transmission line, we have supplied a voltage of 132 kV to 765 kV only, practically. Also, it is stated that we can transfer a power to the long transmission line up to 11,000 kV. Now, as I stated you earlier, that in case of medium transmission line, we have resistive, inductive load, and a capacitance load is introduced in the system. And we all know that our electrical power system consists of only five parameters, which is voltage, current, resistive, inductive, and capacitance. So now, since the transmission line is carrying a voltage of 132 kV, long transmission line is carrying a voltage of up to 132 kV, then since it is carrying a voltage of 132 kV, it is also carrying a current in amperes, huge amperes, milliamperes, mega, sorry, in case in the order of mega amperes. So now we have again three parameters that has to be estimated while while calculating the transmission line. Yeah, someone is asking me that can I provide notes? So yes, I can provide you the notes and I'll send you all the PPTs that I have discussed from the last two sessions. Okay. So don't take tension of your numericals. I'll providing you the complete data. Okay. So now getting back to the short term, medium, and the long transmission lines. In order to plan a system by a contractor of a short transmission line, medium transmission line, or a long transmission line, it becomes very necessary to the contractor to calculate the size of the conductor, the length of the conductor, the current density that will be acting upon the conductor. So in order to calculate this parameters, it becomes very necessary for the contractor to calculate the load that will be estimated, that will be fed by the transmission line. Along with it, we have to also keep in mind the resistive, inductive, and capacitive effect of the transmission line. So the transmission line that we are planning must feed the load, must be able to feed the load, must be that means it must be sustainable to the load, as well as the second thing, it must also sustain the parameter load, that is the resistive, inductive, and capacitive load of the transmission line itself. Further, we are discussing about the short transmission lines. The short transmission lines has a line voltage less than 20 kV. The length of transmission line is up to 80 kilometers and the capacitance effect are very small and hence we neglect it. The short-term transmission lines can be seen in your background. Then we have a medium transmission line. The characteristics of medium transmission line is that the line voltage is moderately high as compared to the short transmission lines. It is greater than 20 kV, but it is less than 100 kV. Length of the line is about 50 kilometer to 150 kilometer. The capacitance is also significant and thus it cannot be neglected. So as I told you earlier that in short transmission line, the capacitance was very low and thus it was neglected. But in case of medium transmission line, it becomes appreciable and thus it cannot be neglected and we have to consider the effect of capacitance on the transmission line from medium transmission line to higher transmission lines, long transmission lines. One such type of medium transmission line is shown in the adjacent figure that you can see. Over here, Further, we have the long transmission lines. These long transmission lines has a voltage greater than 100 kV. And as I have discussed earlier, that this voltage may vary from 100 kV to 765 kV in practical, and theoretically it has been studied that we can supply a voltage of 11,000 kV on the same transmission line. The length of the overhead line is more than 150 kilometers, and the line constants are considered uniformly distributed over the whole length of the line. And again, in the long transmissions, the capacitance becomes, we consider that in case of a long transmission lines, we need to calculate resistive, inductive, and capacitive load also. Voltage regulation. Voltage regulation is a term which is a most important term which we come across in electrical machine 1, electrical machine 2, power system 1 and power system 2. So now let us see what is meant by the voltage regulation and what do you mean by the percentage voltage regulation. When a transmission line is carrying current, there is a voltage drop in the line due to the resistance and inductance of the line. Thus, the sending end voltage is not equal to the receiving end voltage. And thus it has been seen that this results in the receiving end voltage of the line is generally less than the sending end voltage. Now, this difference in the sending end voltage and the receiving end voltage provides us with the voltage drop of the transmission line. This voltage drop to the receiving end voltage provides us the voltage regulation. That means we can say that the voltage find the fluctuation of voltage in the transmission line from sending end to the receiving end. Thus, the percentage voltage regulation helps us to find the percentage of voltage fluctuation from sending end to the receiving end. And thus, we derive it as Vs minus Vr upon Vr, that is the sending end voltage minus receiving end voltage, that will be giving us the voltage drop across the transmission line into 100. Thus we have studied the voltage regulation of the transmission line can be calculated as the voltage drop to, it is the ratio of the voltage drop to the receiving end voltage. And if you multiply it by 100, we can calculate the percentage voltage regulation. Now, transmission efficiency. The power obtained at the receiving end of the transmission line is generally very less than the sending end power due to the losses in the line resistance. The ratio of receiving end power to the sending end power of a transmission line is known as the transmission efficiency of the line. And it is denoted by many times by eta. So transmission efficiency is nothing but the ratio of output power to the input power or output energy to the input energy. In other terms, in terms of transmission line, we have two terms. The end where we input the power, we can call such an end as a sending end. And the end at which we receive the power, we call it as receiving end. So instead of saying output power to the input power, we have here receiving end power to the sending end power. So if we want to calculate the percentage transmission efficiency, we need to multiply it just by 100. So here we have studied the percentage transmission efficiency. Now, as we have seen in the introduction, that we need to study the whole transmission line, and the whole transmission line can be assumed to be either an equivalent pi network or into an equivalent T network. So we can here calculate all its parameters that we have seen, which were resistance, inductance, capacitance, impedance, admittance, current, voltage, voltage regulation, percentage transmission efficiency. All these 9 to 10 parameters can be calculated using these two methods, which is nominal T method and pi method. In this method, the whole line capacitance is assumed to be concentrated at the middle point of the line, and half the line resistance and reactances are lumped on its either side as shown in the figure. Therefore, in this arrangement, full charging current flows over half the line. In figure, one phase of the three-phase transmission line is shown as it is advantageous to work in phase instead of line-to-line values. Then we'll convert these line values into the phase values, into the three phase values, but just by multiplying it by 3. So what we are able to see here is that the whole transmission line is assumed to be consisting of resistance, resistive, inductive, and capacitance. The whole capacitance of the transmission line is lumped right at the center of the transmission line. And this capacitance divides the whole transmission line into two equal halves. Then we consider that these two equal halves consist of equal resistances and equal inductances. Thus, we can say that the complete transmission line can be represented by an equivalent circuit, which you are able to see on your screens. Thus, one more thing we do in the nominal T method calculation or in nominal pi method, it is that we consider individually a single phase consisting of a live and a neutral conductor. So here you are able to see that current is entering. That means it is the sending end of the transmission line. Also, we have shown dotted lines, so it is nothing but it is a neutral conductor. As I have stated earlier, that the whole capacitance of the transmission line is lumped right in the center of the transmission line. This capacitance divides the transmission line into two equal halves, such that the resistance in the first half becomes R by 2, in the second becomes XL by 2. Also, in the other half, the resistance becomes R by 2 and the capacitance becomes XL by 2. Then the whole supply, which is coming from the sending end, is fed to the receiving end. And from this figure, we are able to see that it consists of the transmission line consists of resistance as well as inductance, and thus this causes a voltage drop. And due to this, we have seen that the sending end voltage is never equal to the receiving end voltage. Instead, the receiving end voltage is less as compared to the sending end voltage. Thus, we can say that the transmission line causes a voltage drop, and due to this, a new term, that is voltage regulation, is need to be studied here due to the presence of voltage drop in the system. Now let us deal with some calculations. The nominal T model of the transmission line consists of, let us consider the series impedance of the line is Z, which is the combination of resistance as well as inductance. The inductance being an imaginary part, we represent it as Z is equals to R plus Jx. Due to this admittance, the equation of admittance becomes JWC. The receiving end voltage is represented by VR, the receiving end current is represented by IR. Current in the capacitor is equals to IAB. Let us state that the sending end voltage is Vs and the sending end current is Is. The sending end voltage and current may be obtained by application of KVL and KCL in the circuit shown below. Thus, we receive from the equivalent circuit diagram that VAB is equals to VR plus Z by 2 IR. Also, the current IAB in the capacitor can be given by V by Z, and 1 upon Z is termed as admittance, giving us Y into Z. By Kirchhoff's law at node A, here at node A, by KCL, we can write that the sending end current is equal to the receiving end current plus the current in the capacitor arm. But in the earlier equation that we have seen that IAB can be written as admittance into impedance. Sorry, into voltage. Thus, IS is equals to written as IR plus Y into VAB. IS is equals to IR plus Y, and we know that from KVL, VAB can be written as Vs plus Z by 2 into IR. By KVL at the sending end mesh, we have Vs is equals to VAB plus Z by 2 into Is. Thus, Vs comes out to be VR plus Z by 2 into IR plus Z by 2 into the whole term YVR admittance to voltage drop plus 1 plus ZY by 2 into IR. Thus, placing it in a matrix form, we found that the whole transmission line can be represented in a matrix form. Now, representing it in a matrix form provides us with the A, B, C, and D constants such that A is equal to D, which provides us with 1 plus ZY by 2. C is equal to Y and B is equal to Z, 1 plus ZY by 4. Then the equation of nominal T method. All these parameters is received from this equivalent circuit, and then these each and every parameters is written here that the voltage of the capacitor is given by VR is equals to IR plus Z by 2. Current of capacitor is IC j omega C V. Sending end current IS is equals to IR plus IC. Line loss sending end is equals to IS Z by 2. Sending end voltage is equals to VS is equals to IS Z by 2 plus V1. Thus we can say that we can represent now this equation of nominal T method into a phasor diagram. So here we have the phasor diagram of the equivalent circuit of the power system, of our electrical power system, or specifically we can say that of our transmission line. and we can represent this equivalent circuit of this transmission line into a phasor diagram. In order to make a phasor diagram, the first thing we do here is we form a, we take a reference. So let us consider that the receiving end voltage is our reference voltage. So we draw it over the x-axis as OA. The transmission line causes voltage drops at various levels. Thus, also that the receiving end current lags the voltage by a phase difference of phi, and we represented it by phi r. Thus, the voltage drop that is caused due to the half transmission line is given by IR into R by 2. Thus, we draw a parallel AB to OA, and this provides us with the voltage drop, resistive voltage drop. Also, this half also consists of an inductor. So this inductor will again will cause an inductive voltage drop. And now this voltage drop is given by IR into XL by 2. So again, here the IR into XL by 2 is represented as shown here. So now, since again in the second half we have another half resistance and another half inductance. Now this half resistance is represented by Is into R by 2. The drop across the second half is represented by Is into R by 2. And this sending end inductance again causes this drop, and we represent it here as Is XL by 2. Thus, whole soul, what we can do here is we just connect the starting point of a phasor diagram and the ending point. Thus, we can say that the voltage that we received is the vector sum of each and every voltages, thus making it and providing us to the equal to the sending end voltage. Nominal pi model of a medium transmission line. Okay, earlier we have discussed about the nominal T network. Now let us see what is nominal pi model of a medium transmission line. In the nominal pi model of a medium transmission line, the series impedance of the line is concentrated right at the center, and half of each of the capacitance is placed at the center of the line. The nominal pi model of the line is shown in the diagram below. Here, what we do here is we divide the whole capacitance of the transmission line into two equal halves, and then the resistance and inductance of the complete transmission line, we assume it to be present right at the center of these two capacitances, thus forming a pi structure. Okay. The equivalent circuit of the complete transmission line in form of nominal pi model is represented here as so now here what we have done, the complete capacitance of the transmission line is divided into two equal halves, and these two equal capacitances are assumed to be at one at the sending end and another at the receiving end. The remaining resistive and inductive load is formed to be a lump sum and formed right at the center of these two capacitors. Now in this circuit diagram, we have some parameters like sending end voltage, which is the voltage which we have right at the sending end. Then we have sending end current, which is represented by Is. At this node, we assume that the sending end current is divided as IL and another IC2. Then the current IL, which is the line current, gets divided at the another node such that one of the current feeds the capacitor and the left out current is fed at the receiving end to the load. Here, the dotted line is represented by a neutral conductor, or we can say that the neutral conductor is represented by a dotted line. The phasor diagram is too simple. Here, we have taken as here we have taken the receiving end voltage as a reference voltage. So we have drawn it over the x-axis. Then we found that the capacitor, due to the capacitor, the due to the inductor and resistance, the load, the voltage drop is called is seen across the resistive load and inductive load. Therefore, forming a voltage drop of IL into R and a voltage drop of IL into XL. Then, if we join the last two ends of this phasor diagram, we find that it forms out to be the sending end voltage. Thus, we can say that the sending end voltage is distributed over the load, over the resistance, over the inductance, as well as over the capacitors as well. The phase shift between the sending end voltage and the sending end current is represented by phi s. And the phase shift between the receiving end voltage and the receiving end current is represented by phi r. Thus, we can say that the complete transmission line can be represented into equivalent nominal T network as well as equivalent pi network. Thus, it helps us. Thus, we can say that the consideration of complete power system into transmission line into nominal pi and nominal t network helps us with the calculation of certain parameters that are needed to plan an transmission line, which is done by many companies and by the electrical engineers. So it becomes one of the most important aspect. So the equations of nominal pi methods can be given as considering VAB is equals to the receiving end voltage VR. The admittance of the impedance of arm AB is given by ZAB, which is equals to 1 upon admittance of the same arm. By Ohm's law, V is equals to IR, therefore I is equal to V upon R, that is V upon Z, where Z is the complete resistance due to the inductance as well as the resistance itself, giving us Y by 2 is equals to VR. Also by KCL at node A, we can say that I is equals to IR plus IAB is equals to IR plus Y by 2 VR. The voltage at the sending end Vs is equals to VCD is equals to VAB plus ZI is equals to VR plus Z times IR plus Y by 2 into VR. Vs is equals to 1 plus Zy by 2 VR plus ZIR. By Ohm's law, we get that ICD is equals to VCD upon ZCD is equals to Y by 2 Vs is equals to Y by 2 round brackets 1 by 1 plus ZY by 2 VR plus ZIR. Sending end current is found by applying KCL at node C such that IS is equals to I plus ICD. There, but I is nothing but IR plus Y by 2 VR plus Y by 2 1 plus ZY by 2 VR plus ZIR. IS is equals to Y 1 plus ZY by 4 VR plus 1 plus ZY by 2 into IR. Equations can be written in matrix form as Vs upon Is is equals to 1 plus Zy, Z, Y, 1 plus Zy by 4, 1 plus Zy by 2. By comparing it with a standard equation, Vs by the matrix, in the matrix, Vs upon Is is equals to AB by CD, VR upon IR. We find that the constant A, B, C, and D is given by A and D are same, that is V 1 plus ZY by 2, B is equals to Z, and C is equals to Y 1 plus ZY by 4. Thus, the whole electrical transmission line is represented in a matrix form, and this matrix is responsible and is very helpful for our calculations A, B, C, and D parameters. The phasor diagrams of a nominal pi side circuit is shown in the biography below. Also, it is drawn for a lagging power factor of the load as well as for the leading power factor of the load. Now let us have some assumptions that OA is equals to VR, that is the receiving end voltage, and it is taken as a reference phasor. Okay. Then we have OB, which is taken as the load current with the lagging power factor at an angle of phi r. Let us consider line BE is equals to IAB, which is a current in the receiving end capacitance, and it leads VR by 90 degree. The line current I is the phasor sum of IR and IAB, and it is represented by OE in the same diagram. Now, we can see that AC is equals to IR, that is which is the voltage drop in the resistance of the line, and it is parallel to I. Okay. Then we have the phasor CD, which provides us with the inductive voltage drop in the line, and is perpendicular to I. Then we have another phasor AD, which is the voltage drop in the line impedance. Also, next phasor we have here is OD, which is the sending end voltage to the neutral. It is a phasor sum of the receiving end voltage and the voltage drop across the complete transmission line, that is IZ. The current taken by the capacitance at the sending end is ICD. It leads the sending end voltage Vs by 90 degrees. Then we have our next phasor OL, which is equals to the sending end current, and it is found to be that it is a phasor sum of I and ICD, where I is the receiving end current. Phi S forms a phase angle between the sending end voltage and sending end current, whereas cos phi s provides us with the sending end power factor. Now the same that we have assumed, all the parameters that we have assumed earlier is represented here in a phasor diagram of a nominal pi model. The red phasors, that is VR and IR, forms the receiving end voltage and receiving end current there, due to which it forms a phase angle of phi r, which comes out to be the phase angle between the receiving end current and receiving end voltage, thus forming us a cos phi of power of, that is a power factor of receiving end voltage. Okay. Here we have completed our last unit, and now let us start with the revision of the first unit, revision of the first unit. In the first unit, we have studied earlier the single line diagram of the complete power system, the components of the power system, classification of substation based upon the service requirements, classification of substation based on the constructional features, comparison between the indoor and outdoor substation, advantages of high transmission voltages, concepts of real, reactive, and complex power. We have also studied the voltage and frequency dependencies of the load, and also the most important part of the first unit was the load characteristics, that is the variation of load with respect to time. Starting with the introduction, we say that an electrical power system consists of a generation, transmission, and a distribution system. The transmission system supplies bulk power, and the distribution system transfers electric power to the ultimate consumers. The generation of the electrical energy is nothing but the conversion of one form of energy into an electrical energy. And in case of hydroelectric power plant, in case of nuclear power plant, and in case of thermal power plant, this energy is mechanical energy, which is converted into electrical energy. This mechanical energy is converted into electrical energy with the help of synchronous generators. The electrical energy, sometimes the electrical energy is generated from non-renewable energy sources like wind, waves, fossil fuels, etc. The generating voltages are usually 6.6 kV, 10.5 kV, 11 kV, 13.8 kV, 15.75 kV, and so on. Here we have a single line diagram of an AC power system. Here we have represented our complete electrical power system in a single line on a single page. Here, the first thing we have here is a generating station, which is represented by a sinusoidal wave in a circular symbol. The voltage levels at the generating station varies from 6.6 kV to 15.75 kV. Now the voltage that is stepped up with the help of a step-up transformer and the voltage received from the generating station is stepped up to a voltage of up to 765 kV. This 765 kV volt kV of power is fed to a receiving station wherein this receiving station steps down voltage to 66 kV, then it is further stepped down to 6.6 kV, and then at last it is again stepped down at the last portion to 11 kV by 400 volt or 230 volt, forming giving us a supply voltage of single phase and three phase. Here we have all these parameters, generators, transformers are discussed earlier and in the previous single line diagram. Here we have the control equipment. Control equipment becomes a more important part of the power system. And the control equipments are circuit breaker and isolators. Circuit breakers are used for opening or closing a circuit nominal and abnormal conditions. The different types of circuit breakers are oil circuit breakers, air blast circuit breakers, vacuum circuit breakers, and SF6 circuit breakers. During fault conditions, the relay in connection with the circuit breaker senses the fault and sends a trigger to the circuit breaker due to which the circuit breaker operates. In case of SF6 circuit breaker, we use sulfur hexafluoride gas, which is a highly electronegative gas, due to which when a spark is occurred, SF6 gas is sprayed over the spark, due to which the SF6 circuit breaker quenches the arc using the SF6 gas because the sulfur hexafluoride gas is electronegative and thus it has an affinity towards the electrons. Thus, it consumes all the electrons formed during the arc and thus quenches the arc. Isolators. Isolators are placed in the substations to isolate the part of system during maintenance or during fault conditions. Also, it can operate only during no load conditions. Isolated switches are provided on each side of the circuit breaker. So now let us see how does an isolator looks. Here on a screen you are able to see an isolator. One of the isolator is open and another of the isolator is closed. When these isolators are opened or closed, huge sparks are developed. Thus, since due to the formation of huge arcs, we place it on the overhead region and not underground. So, then we have a new equipment, bus bar. A bus bars are used to connect number of lines operating at the same voltage electrically. It is made up of copper or aluminum. Different types of bus bar arrangements are single bus bar with sectionalization arrangement, double bus bar arrangement, ring bus bar scheme, etc. Transmission system. A transmission system supplies only large blocks of power to bulk power station on very big consumer. It interconnects the neighboring generating stations into a powerful, that is interconnection of two or more generating stations. Tolerance of transmission line voltage is +5 to -10% due to the variation of the load. The primary transmission line, if the generated power is transmitted through transmission line without stepping up the generating voltage, line current and power loss would be very high. So the generating voltage is stepped up to higher values by using the step-up transformer located in substations known as sending end stations near the generating stations. The high voltage transmission line transmit power from the sending end substation to the receiving end substation. Primary transmission voltages are 110 kV, 132 kV or 220 kV or 400 kV or 760 kV. It uses three-phase and three-wire system. Secondary transmission. At the receiving end substation, the voltage is stepped down to a value of 66 to 33 or 22 kV using step-down transformers. The secondary transmission line forms the link between the receiving end station substation and the secondary station. It uses three-phase, three-wire system and the conductors used are called feeders. The distribution system. The component of an electrical power system connecting all the consumers in an area to the bulk power sources or transmission line is called a distribution system. A distribution system distributes power to domestic, commercial, and relatively small consumers. Distribution transformers are normally installed on poles or on plinth mounted or near the consumers. Primary distribution. At the secondary substation, the voltage is stepped down to 11 kV or 6.6 kV using step-down transformers. The primary distributors form the link between the secondary substation and distribution substation. The power is fed into the primary distribution system. It uses three-phase, three-wire system. Secondary distribution. At the distribution substation, the voltage is stepped down to 400 volts for a three-phase or 230 volt using step-down transformers. The distribution lines are drawn along the roads and service connections to the consumers are tapped off from the distributor. It uses three-phase, four-wire system. Single-phase loads are connected between one phase wire and one neutral wire. Substation. The assembly of apparatus used to change some characteristic like voltage, AC to DC, frequency, power factor, etc. of electric supply is called a substation. A substation transforms voltage from high to low or the reverse or perform any of the several other important functions like switching and converting, etc. For proper functioning and continuity of supply, substation should be properly designed. Need of substation. The practical consideration of the need of substation is to satisfy load growth, to accommodate new generation, to maintain the reliability of requirement. Technical considerations. To step up and step down AC voltage level to break the power flow to provide support to the power flow. Types of substations. On the basis of service requirement and on the basis of constructional features. On the basis of service requirement, substations are substation, power factor correction substation, frequency changer substation, industrial substation, and the last we have is converting substation. Outdoor substation. On the basis of constructional features, we categorize substation as outdoor substation, indoor substation, underground substation, and pole mounted substation. The transformer substation is shown in front of you on a slide, wherein we have a transformer, a huge transformer placed in the transformer substation. And here we are able to see that this transformer is very large and we are able to see a huge tank of oil. Also able to see that there are fans. Over the cooling fans. Thus we can say that it forms a oil-cooled, air-forced cooling method of the transformer. Switching substations. In these substations, this type of substation simply perform the switching operation of power power line. That is, the main purpose of switching substation is to provide a path to the substation, to the power in the substation. Thus, this is seen wherein in the region which has a huge number of power grids and that are interconnected. So in short, we can say that the switching substation helps us in providing interconnection of power plants. Also, we have a power factor correction substation. Those substations which improve the power factor of the system are called as power factor correction substation. These are generally located at the receiving end of the transmission lines. They generally use synchronous condensers as power factor improvement equipments. Also, we have a frequency changer substation. Those substations which change the supply frequency are known as frequency change substations. Such a frequency change may be required for industrial utilizations. And here we are able to see such huge motors which is used for frequency changing, and such a motor is a Schrage motor. Converting substations. These converting substations are used to convert AC power into DC power by using static converting devices like SCRs, and is used for traction, electroplating, and welding purpose. Outdoor substations. We prefer this type of substation when voltage is above 66 kV, because for such voltage, the clearance between the conductor and the space required for switches, circuit breakers, and other equipment becomes so great that it is not possible to install the equipment indoors. Indoor substations. Generally, we use indoor type of substations for voltages up to 11 kV, but this range can be increased up to 66 kV. And presently, it is up to 66 kV in India also. Here, we are able to see huge components of electrical power system mounted indoor. Also, in case of underground substation, this type of substation is preferred in highly populated areas where the space available is limited and the cost and is very costly. One such type of underground station is shown on the slides. Pole mounted substation. This is an outdoor substation which with equipment installed overhead on H pole or 4-pole structure. Here we are able to see that we have blue color insulator as well as the brown color insulator. This blue color insulator is made up of glass, whereas the brown insulator is made up of porcelain clay. This type of substation is used for voltage up to 11 kV, and in case of industries, it is used up to 33 kV. The supply from the 33 kV is given to this 33 kV or 11 kV is given to this huge transformer, and then the secondary of this transformer is fed to the load. Then the diagrammatic view of this pole mounted substation. From this, we can say that the complete structure forms an H of alphabet, an H in the alphabet or letters. So we call this type of pole mounted substation as the H pole or four pole H pole structure. Here we have the lightning arresters. The purpose of this lightning arresters is to ground the surge voltage developed during the lightning and during the thunderstorms into the ground. Here we also have an isolator which is operated using an operating handle of the isolators. Comparison between indoor substation and outdoor substation. Possibility of fault escalation. In case of indoor substation, possibility is more because all the components are installed, therefore clearance required between them is very less. Whereas in case of outdoor substation, less and some components such as bus bar, overhead lines are not insulated, hence clearance between them is more. The time required more because additional building construction is required, whereas in case of outdoor substation less because no building construction is required. Also, the future extension is very low because it is difficult to due to less space available. Whereas in case of outdoor substation, it is very easy due to the more space available. Fault location difficult because all the equipments are closely placed. Whereas easy in case of outdoor substation because all the equipments are in full view. Capital cost. The capital cost is more due to the building construction and also the specifically designed equipments required as they are installed indoor. Less because no building construction is required. Also, there is no need of specially designed equipment. Operation. Difficult as space between equipment is less. Easy as space between equipment is more. Substation equipment. All these substation equipments have been discussed earlier. Basic equipments. The lightning arresters. Lightning arrestor. Now we have the lightning arresters. A lightning arrestor was used in an electrical power system to protect the insulation system from the damaging effect of lightning. Isolating switches. The isolating switches are shown and discussed earlier. Circuit breakers. Now here we have the circuit breakers, and the circuit breaker that we are able to see in front of you is an SF6 circuit breaker, which uses sulfur hexafluoride gas as an arc quenching medium. The power transformer. Then we have a power transformer. The purpose of the power transformer is to get help for voltage measurement. Current transformers and potential transformers. Measurement of electric currents and protective relays is done by the current transformer. Whereas the potential transformer reduced high voltage in a fixed voltage and measurements purpose also. Design layout of 11 kV 400 volt substation. Block diagram of 11 kV by 400 volt supply system. We have seen that the advantage of high transmission voltages are it reduces volume of conductor material required, increases transmission efficiency, decreases percentage line drop, thus providing us with more advantages and limitations of high transmission voltages. The limitations of high transmission voltages is the increased cost of insulating the conductors, the increased cost of transformers, switchgears, and other terminals apparatus. Types of transmission and distribution system. The transmission and distribution systems are classified fundamentally as high voltage AC system HVAC and high voltage DC system HVDC. The advantages of AC system is that high voltages can be built up. The variation in the voltage level as per the requirement can be done using the step up and step down transformer. Generation cost of AC voltage is low. The motors used are simple in construction and have low maintenance. Maintenance of substation is very cheap. Also, we have discussed the disadvantage of AC systems as that the initial setup is very expensive. The AC lines are more sensitive to corona losses. The AC line is even show losses due to the inductance and resistance offered by the line. Cost of equipment increases with transmission voltage. The DC power transmission. For certain applications, we need DC supply system. The AC is converted to DC locally by motor generally generator sets, rotary converters, etc. Advantages of DC system. Only two conductors are required. It has no inductance, capacitance, and hence no surge problem. Less voltage drop and better voltage regulation. No skin effect, low insulation requirement, and low stress on insulators. More system stability and easy synchronization. Disadvantages of DC system. Expensive converters. The power transmitted can be used at lower voltage only. Whereas the voltage transmission is not easier in case of DC and hence it has to be done on the AC side of the system. Design of DC switches and circuit breakers for multi-terminal lines is complicated and very expensive. Comparison between the HVAC and HVDC line. So overall losses, high losses are seen in case of AC, whereas low losses are seen in case of DC. High cost of transmission in HVAC and low cost of transmission in HVDC. Low cost of equipment in HVAC and low cost of transmission in HVDC. Power control is can be controlled in case of HVAC and power can be controlled in case of HVDC. Directionality of link. The HVAC line is unidirectional, but the HVDC line is bidirectional. It depends upon the distance, transmitted power and distance. Transmitted power depends upon the distance, whereas the independent of distance in case of HVDC lines. Number of conductors required in case of HVAC line is 3 and in case of HVDC is 2. We have also seen the symbols, discussed the symbols used for the electrical equipment in the power system. Lightning arrestor, arcing horn, single break isolating switch. Isolators, fuse, link, air blast circuit breaker, oil circuit breaker, underground cables, transformer, three-phase transformer with on-load tap changer, current transformer, potential transformer, distribution board, cubicle box, bus bar, earth switch. Load characteristics. The load characteristics plays an important role in determining the total power and energy requirement of the system. Planning the installed capacity of a power plant, selection of suitable generating capacity for each unit of the plant demand. The demand of system is the load at the receiving terminal averaged over a suitable specific interval of time of short duration. Load curves of a generating station. The total power requirement of a generating station can be estimated using these curves. Load curve or chronological curve, it represents the load in its time sequence. As shown, this curve is obtained by plotting the substation load along y-axis and the time when it occurs along x-axis. Usually it is plotted for 1 day by taking average load based on the time. Interval t, which is usually an hour, the area under the curve represents the total energy consumed by the load in 1 day. The total load supplied by a generating station is normally divided into 3 parts: base load, intermediate load, and the peak load. The portion represented in yellow color or highlighted by yellow is the base load. Then we have the intermediate load, which is varying in nature, and then at last we have the peak load, which is represented by dense lines on top. Here we have completed the revision of our first unit. Starting with the second unit, the concept of power system.